Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. It is May 18th, 2024 and we are starting the morning in downtown Portland, Oregon. UP number 8329 is pulling a train towards the railroad's Brooklyn Intermodal Terminal just a couple of miles ahead. In this video, we will quickly leave the city streets of Portland behind and explore the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. Serving as the border between Oregon and Washington State, the Columbia River is flanked on both sides by railroad lines heading east from the Portland area, with BNSF's Fallbridge Subdivision on the Washington side and Union Pacific's Portland Subdivision on the Oregon side. The western portion of the gorge is marked with pine trees and waterfalls before the landscape opens up heading east. The abundant train action, coupled with the beautiful scenery, makes the Columbia River Gorge a rail photography hotspot and should be on everyone's bucket list. We began the day by following the Oregon side of the Columbia River along Union Pacific's tracks. At Dodson, located 35 miles east of Portland where mileage starts, we were greeted by a fleet of westbound Union Pacific trains beginning with this mixed freight. The western portion of the Portland subdivision cuts through beautiful pine forests with the river on one side of the tracks and towering mountains on the other. The weather started off gloomy, as is stereotypical of the Pacific Northwest, but began to clear up as we headed east. A unique type of train on both the Union Pacific and BNSF lines through the gorge are double-stacked trash trains heading to and from landfills located in the eastern end of the gorge. Our second westbound was an empty, heading for another train load in western Washington. The west end of Dodson Siding is located right next to Horsetail Falls, one of many beautiful waterfalls one can find along the UP tracks in this part of the gorge. Staying at the west end of Dodson siding, we put the drone up in the air for the next westbound, a mixed freight led by one of UP's newly rebuilt Dash 9s. The drone gives a better look at the Horsetail Falls right next to the tracks, as well as the stunning scenery of the Columbia River Gorge. With the westbound UP parade through, our next stop was the riverfront at Cascade Locks, Oregon. 2 trains were coming west on the BNSF Fallbridge Subdivision, and Cascade Locks provided a great location to shoot them from across the river as they rolled through Stevenson, Washington. First up was Amtrak number 27, the Portland section of the Empire Builder. Following behind Amtrak 27 was a westbound BNSF manifest heading towards Vancouver. One of the challenges of filming along the banks of the Columbia River with the equipment that I had was the wind. I apologize if the audio is spotty at times throughout the next few clips. We caught our next batch of trains a few more miles east at Starvation Creek State Park. A half-mile trek up a walking trail provides access to an overlook with sweeping views of both sides of the river. The first train to show up is on the UP side, and it is a westbound loaded potash train. Just another one of the various types of trains one can see along the Columbia River. This train was interchanged to the UP from CPKC at Eastport, Idaho, and is heading to Portland for unloading. Looking across the river soon after the potash train clears, a westbound BNSF loaded coal train makes an appearance. The majority of BNSF traffic on the Fallbridge subdivision is westbound, as BNSF uses bidirectional running in the state of Washington, running westbound loaded unit trains along the Columbia River route and eastbound empty unit trains along the Scenic or Stampede subdivisions out of Seattle. Looking west, we can see the loaded potash train has pulled into a siding, and in a few more minutes, an eastbound mixed freight with 4 engines up front and 2 in the middle is heading towards Starvation Creek on the UP side of the river. We wait out at Starvation Creek for one more train, this time on the BNSF side, as a westbound manifest heads towards Vancouver with one unit up front and one unit shoving on the rear. The towering mountains on each side of the gorge make the train look tiny in comparison. After this train, we will cross over and leave Oregon behind and spend the rest of the trip east on the Washington side of the river with the BNSF Fallbridge Subdivision. After crossing the river and heading about another 10 miles, we arrive in Bingen, Washington, where we catch our first action on the Washington side of the river with a westbound grain train heading towards Vancouver. After the quick stop in Bingen, we continue east, eager to explore what the Washington side of the Columbia River had to offer. The views remained stunning, and the train action remained hot, with another westbound grain train meeting us at Lyle for a beautiful shot on an S-curve. Continuing east, the pine trees that had previously lined the right-of-way have given way to crops and open fields. The wide-open landscape allows one to see for miles, as evidenced by this westbound UP train on the Oregon side of the river moving through the Dalles. BNSF also keeps its westbound parade coming with another hopper train stopping us near Avery, Washington at milepost 100. The grassy cliffs on the Oregon side of the Columbia River provide a beautiful backdrop to this interesting power set consisting of a war bonnet painted C44-9W trailing second. While taking in the scenery, pulling over for trains along the Fallbridge sub can prove to be difficult as the line boasts a high track speed with most trains coming at you when traveling east. We barely make it down to Mary Hill for a westbound grain train. One of the best parts of photographing the railroads in the Columbia River Gorge is how easy it is to film trains on both sides of the river at any given point, which both adds to the diversity of what one can see along the rails and makes for interesting cinematography with the river in the foreground. Our next two trains emphasize this fact as Union Pacific sent 2 stack trains towards Portland on the Oregon side of the river. We are now pretty much exactly 100 miles east of where we started our day in the gorge at Dodson, milepost 32 of the UP Portland subdivision. In just these 100 miles, it's incredible how much the climate has changed and the scenery looks unrecognizable as compared to closer to Portland. There was one more train moving through the gorge before a lull set in, so we intercepted our final train along the river at McCready as 3 BNSF units bring yet another trainload of grain west. From McCready, we bid the UP tracks farewell and continued to follow the BNSF east. It's another 72 miles to SP&S Junction, where the Fallbridge subdivision merges with the Yakima Valley subdivision from northern Washington, which carries the aforementioned bidirectional eastbound traffic. From the junction, it is another 2 miles to BNSF's major rail yard at Pasco, Washington, where manifest trains are built and unit trains are recrewed. When we arrived in Pasco, a westbound coal train was stopped awaiting a crew with one of BNSF's 25th anniversary heritage engines as the DPU. In a few more minutes, an eastbound empty oil train off the Yakima Valley sub rolled through the yard as well. In just another mile or so, this oil train will stop for a crew change, with a new conductor and engineer getting on board to take it over the Lakeside subdivision to Spokane, Washington. Stay tuned for the next video as we will cover that territory in detail, but for now, our journey along the Columbia River has come to an end. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.